Photoshop history. Let's travel back over 25 years ago and talk about how Photoshop was started. So we know that Photoshop is a graphics editor, and we say it was published by Adobe Systems. It is currently the market leader for commercial bitmap and image manipulation, and it's described as the industry standard for graphic professionals. It was one of those early killer applications on a Macintosh. It was rebranded along the way, and so we came up with Creative Suite products, the CS reflecting Creative Suite, and now CC, the Creative Cloud. When we have a Photoshop document, we call it a .psd, and that's the native Photoshop document. This is the format that stores with the image the support for almost all of the image options available in Photoshop. So that means it includes the layers with potential masks, transparency, alpha channel, and much more. Note the correct spelling of the software. I see this in a lot of resumes and in job postings, the incorrect spelling. So back in the first iteration, we did have a capital S in shop. So it was capital P for photo, capital S, shop, all one word. Later, that inner cap was removed. So the correct spelling is with a small s. We have Photoshop plugins, and those are basically add-on programs that act like mini editors, and they can extend Photoshop's functionality. What programming language is Photoshop written in? C++. Also note that Adobe Photoshop, discourages the use of Photoshop as a verb, as in using photoshopping to refer to photo editing. So to prevent its trademark from being a generalized trademark. But we know that Photoshop is always used as a verb, and I believe a few years back it was actually added to the dictionary. Before we start our discussion on Photoshop, let's look at 1982. In 1982, Adobe Systems was founded. Two former Xerox employees, Charles and John, founded Adobe Systems. And it actually was founded in Northern California in what we would now call Silicon Valley. On to 1987. So in 1987, we are in Ann Arbor, Michigan. We have a gentleman, and his name is Thomas Knoll, and he begins to write graphic subroutines on a Mac Plus. Thomas teams up with his brother, eventually John, to combine those subroutines into an app called Display. But let's just look a little bit more deeper into the history here. So we have Mr. Glenn Knoll. This is Thomas and John's father. He was a professor at the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor College. He was in the College of Engineering's Nuclear Engineering and Radiological Sciences. On the side, Mr. Knoll liked photography. He was an amateur photographer. And so in the family basement, they had a darkroom. Mr. Knoll was also an early adopter of microcomputers, a passion that his boys eagerly embraced. So now let's talk about Thomas a little bit more. So Thomas Knoll was a PhD student at the University of Michigan, and he was working towards a PhD in computer vision, the process of digital images. He began writing a program on his Macintosh Plus to display grayscale images on a monochrome display. So he began writing these graphic subroutines on his Mac Plus. His goal was then to display the grayscale on a monochrome through dithering on that 1-bit display. What he was working on, he called Display. So the software that he was building, he called that program Display. Well, his brother John was an employee at Industrial Light and Magic, sometimes referred to as ILM. So Thomas's brother John here, it was Industrial Light and Magic. They were a leader in computer graphics research and the corporate sibling to Pixar. It was noted that Industrial Light and Magic was the visual effects arm of Lucasfilm, the famous motion picture company founded by George Lucas. So actually John Knoll ended up serving as visual effects supervisor on projects such as Mission Impossible in 1996, Star Trek First Contact in 1996, and Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace in 1999. So John's brother, his initial program, which he called Display, caught the attention of his brother John. And John recommended that Thomas turn it into a full-fledged image editing program. He wanted to include things like dodge and burn, contrast and hue, again, all referencing to their father's darkroom in the family basement. So Thomas was using this display on the Mac Plus, and it cost approximately $2,599. John, who worked for Industrial Light and Magic, remember, which is kind of that visual effects arm of Lucasfilm, was using image processing tools on the Pixar, which cost $135,000. So here you can see where it all started to roll.